Pokémon Legends Arceus. A very bold and very ambitious departure from the mainline Pokémon we've all come to know. Game Freak decided to release this game during the whole 25-year anniversary cycle too, a very exciting time full of hype and celebration, so it kinda needed to impress. Factor in that Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl had only just come out a few months earlier to a less than satisfied player base. These were not the Sinnoh remakes fans were hoping for or anticipating. Players were looking to this reimagining of Gen 4's flagship region to give them something to cheer for. This game is very different. Risks were taken. But did they pay off in the end? Let's dive in and explore the ambitious madness of Pokémon Legends Arceus. Spoilers, those will happen. So I think a good place to start is the setting of this game. Legends Arceus takes us back to the Sinnoh region, but it's not the Sinnoh region. This game takes place in a Sinnoh region of the past, back when it was first starting to be populated, and it was called the Hisui region. Around 200 years before the events of Diamond and Pearl, I want to say. I don't think it's ever explicitly confirmed anywhere, but we're a decent ways back into the past here. None of the current towns or cities exist apart from Jubilife, and even that is a village right now rather than a city. Outside of that, it's all wild areas. A vast wilderness. The Hisui region is very raw and mostly uninhabited by humans at this point. There are the occasional signs of human activity, but for the most part, this is the domain of wild Pokemon. If you're a big Sinnoh fan, this is going to be really interesting, because you'll have a good sense of where certain towns and routes and stuff should be, and it'll be fun to see what currently occupies that space before it gets tarmacked over. I do think we needed a bit more though, even just a couple of extra villages in there similar to Jubilife, you know? But I get it, the Hisui region is supposed to be very early on in its establishment. I just find that it does get a fair bit monotonous as we unlock area after area that is just more wilderness. That could be a personal preference thing though. My brain likes to segment things as frequently as it can, and towns and cities are good little checkpoints in that sense. Overall, a really cool region though. It is nice to run around in. There are plenty of varying environments, so it's not like you'll get lost at any point. Very picturesque as well, even with the muted tones of this game, but we'll get into the graphics and aesthetics in a little bit. For now, let's have a look at the early game, how this game sucks you into the world. And actually, we fall from the sky into the world. It's a classic isekai setup. Our character is actually from the modern day, but gets flung back into the distant past by Arceus for no reason really. The one thing we're told is to seek out all Pokemon. Beyond that, I really don't know. Maybe it could be to help build relationships between people and Pokemon in the process, something like that. But whatever the reason is, our character is the chosen one for this quest. Anyway, we end up on a beach, and we are picked up, rescued essentially, by Professor Laventon. And I really enjoyed this opening section of the game because it's so brazenly different to the traditional Pokemon early game. We're not this young starlet going on a fun-filled adventure. We are a foreign presence in an unfamiliar place, where pretty much everything we know about how the Pokemon world functions is useless. There's a genuine feeling of vulnerability here. You really do feel like an outsider, and you don't know what to expect around each corner. Even as we are granted boarding in Jubilife Village, it's done so reluctantly. We're burdened with proving ourselves as an ally and not a threat. We have to earn the locals' trust. And then we're introduced to how we'll be doing that, and that's by carrying out research on Pokemon. Pokemon haven't been fully established as friends yet. They don't live in harmony with humans for the most part. Far from it, they're still considered by most people here to be dangerous and terrifying creatures. But that's where we come in very handy, because we're not scared of them whatsoever. And there are some great new additions in this game. We're used to getting regional variants at this point, but what we aren't familiar with is Pokemon variants that were lost to time. Here we have Hisuian variants of Pokemon that, I'll be fair, I struggle to retcon in my head. Like I thought Voltorb was a result of some failed Pokeball experiment, why is there an ancient version with an additional grass typing? I think we've come to realise at this point though that Pokemon doesn't care too much about making complete sense. But none of it matters in the grand scheme of things because some of my favourite Pokemon got the regional form treatment here. Sneasel gets a badass fighting poison variant. Growlithe and Arcanine get these more pre-domesticated looking variants. The Zorua line, do I even need to say any words here? Even the starter Pokemon, which are 3 Pokemon plucked from different regions, have these wilder looking final stage variants in this region. I love the extra evolutions too, the ones that were lost to time. That's where I was really hooked. Scyther having this grittier long lost evolution. Ursaring gets a rugged new stage, although it would get overshadowed in a very dramatic way just a year or so down the line. Weirdia is a gorgeous, well overdue evolution for Stantler. Yeah, I don't have many complaints about the new Pokemon, except maybe Sneasler. That guy creeps me out a little bit. And as we traverse the world, we see that it's not just the landscape that's different in this world, but the very ways we obtain items and catch Pokemon and battle Pokemon and complete the Pokédex are completely different to everything we've ever known. While you can still buy items in Legends Arceus, your primary method is going to be crafting them. As you run around the world, you'll be constantly picking up materials like wood and stones and berries, all of which can be crafted to create familiar items like Pokeballs and potions, etc, etc. I'll be honest, I spent so much time early on in my playthrough just running around and stocking up on items. Sometimes I would play for a solid 4 hours and have made zero progress in the actual game itself. But it definitely catches people like me in their web, because this is the kind of thing I love to do passively while I'm watching TV. And also I'm one of those people who likes to get all the grindy stuff out of the way in 1 or 2 long sessions, so I can just play the game for a good while without having to worry about it. I remember I didn't have to worry about Pokeballs for ages because I just banked up so many in my storage. And speaking of those, yep, we still use Pokeballs to catch Pokemon here. They're much more primitive versions of Pokeballs, but they do look really cool. The little manual lock on the front is a fun touch. But the biggest change to catching Pokemon in this game is that you can catch them without battling them. You can still battle them if you want to, but you can also just sneak up and throw a Pokeball at them while they're ambling around in the field. You can also use a variety of items to distract or stun Pokemon to help you out with some of the more trickier ones too. Again, this is very satisfying, and makes catching Pokemon a lot faster. A lot of people were disappointed that this feature didn't carry over to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but there's a very simple reason why in my eyes. And that has to do with how you complete the Pokédex in these games. See, simply catching a Pokemon isn't enough to fill its Pokédex entry in Legends Arceus. You have to catch multiple of those Pokemon, sometimes of varying sizes, or catch a certain amount without them spotting you, evolve a certain number of them. Completing each one of those gets you to the next research level on that Pokemon. And a Pokemon's Pokédex entry is only considered complete when you achieve research level 10. It's the hardest Pokédex we've ever had to complete. I eventually did it once. I will never attempt to do it again. But it's a satisfying grind as you gradually tick off more and more requirements. And yeah, the point I was building up to there is that it makes sense for you to be able to sprint around and catch dozens of Pokemon very quickly here, because the game requires you to catch a lot of Pokemon. Scarlet and Violet don't. You just need to catch one of each. So outside of looking for favourable IVs for competitive Pokemon, there wouldn't be much use in letting you skip around Paldea catching 20 Pokemon a minute. Pokemon battles are revamped in Legends Arceus. It's mostly the same, it's still turn-based battling, but with the introduction of strong style and agile style moves. You can kinda guess what these do by their names. Strong style will hit harder but slow you down. Agile style will hit lighter but speed you up. How that works in practice is, it alters the move order. If you use an agile style move, you might be able to move twice in a row. If you use a strong style move, you could be letting your opponent move twice in a row afterwards. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like this at all. It adds some extra strategy into the game, and I'm not against that, but the main frustration I had with it was when you'd be battling more than one Pokemon at once. The amount of times I found myself stuck in a situation where my Pokemon isn't able to get an attack off, and I'm just sitting there taking 5 attacks in a row from enemy Pokemon. when I haven't even used a strong style move to put myself in that situation, it tilted me a bit, I'll admit. Maybe that's a skill issue on my part, I don't know. But I wasn't big on this particular style of battling. But let me know how you feel about it in the comments. And speaking of Pokemon, we have a new category of Pokemon added in Legends Arceus: Alpha Pokemon. These are Pokemon that are bigger and stronger than regular Pokemon, and they have big scary red eyes. That's about it really. They're very aggressive. They'll chase you down more enthusiastically than the average Pokemon. The coolest part about them is that they have a special mark that carries over into other games. So they are worth catching, especially if it's your favourite Pokemon. Do I have an Alpha Eevee somewhere? I need to check. If you fall prey to these Pokemon, or any wild Pokemon really, you will black out. That's a unique threat in this game. The Pokemon will attack you. And when you're attacked, the border of your screen will get blacker and blacker, and then eventually red, and then you'll black out. And you don't want to do that, because you'll lose a bunch of items that can only be salvaged by other players with an internet connection. So just try not to black out, just run for your life. Outside of battle, we also use Pokemon to navigate our surroundings. Ride Pokemon, it's not a new concept. We had it just one generation ago in the Alola games. It works. I've never been a fan of being able to call upon Pokemon we didn't actually catch, but it's a convenient means to an end. And the last thing I quickly want to mention here is space-time distortions. This is where a big dome-looking thing appears on the map, and if you charge into it, there are rare items all over the place, rare Pokemon all over the place, but those Pokemon will be extra aggro. You don't get a lot of time to think about things in here, so you've got to be very switched on and very agile to get the most out of them. Fun though. Scary, but fun. So let's have a bit of a natter about the story of Pokémon Legends Arceus. Upon settling into Jubilife Village, we are initiated into the Survey Corps, and tasked with researching Pokemon. And it all seems fairly light-hearted in the earlier stages. I actually felt like a bit of an expert in this world. Everyone else around me is pretty clueless about Pokemon, but I'm a dab hand with them. This is going to be a piece of cake. Famous last words. There are a lot of quests to do in this game, including a large amount of optional side quests if you fancy it. But the main ones that sort of split the game into sections are the noble Pokemon battles. So, noble Pokemon are protectors of the land, but this giant space-time rift that's appeared in the sky has released some kind of force or energy that has caused these Pokemon to get worked up into a frenzy. They're now a threat to the safety of the region. And so, it falls upon us, a child still visibly shaken from going to bed one night and waking up on a beach 2 centuries in the past, to quell these dangerous beasts. These are the boss battles of the game. There are 5 of them to conquer, and they're fun. Maybe difficult if you're not used to this kind of thing, but I really enjoyed these. You have to dodge and weave away from the Pokemon's attacks, and then take your chances to throw bombs at them to reduce their frenzy gauge to 0. They're not too difficult once you figure out their attack patterns, because they do attack in the same repeated sequence of actions over and over. The more hardcore gamers would probably want a less predictable challenge, but I think it was engaging enough. Even though the actions were predictable, you still have to have decent reaction times to dodge out of harm's way. We take on these challenges alongside some really colourful characters too, a lot of whom are ancestors of characters we know and love today. There are way too many to fire off, but to highlight some favourites, I really enjoyed the Diamond and Pearl clan leaders, Adaman and Irida. Best fits in the game 100%. Celine just mirrors Cyrus's stern, apathetic demeanour so well. Those existential genes are very strong. The Misfortune sisters gave huge Canker sisters energy for some reason. I might be dating myself with that comment. I found them quite funny. You'll happen across so many lively characters in this game. And like I mentioned, a lot of them are ancestors to modern day characters. So you'll have a fun time connecting those dots as well. All of this is set to a soundtrack that has this really unique quality to it. I've spoken about this briefly before. It's a soundtrack that really fixes you in the moment, and gives you this huge wave of nostalgia coming back to it, even if it hasn't even been that long. It's a really hard feeling to try and explain. But like, I went back to Legends Arceus to have a casual little run around a year after the game had been out, and it felt way longer. It felt like I was revisiting a place that I hadn't been for a long time. And that was all down to the OST. These tracks thrust me back in time to my first playthrough in the most vivid ways. I am primarily talking about the softer, moodier tracks like when you're out in the fields or in Jubilife Village. The Jubilife Village theme in particular is just beautifully written. Pokémon game music rarely ever misses, but there's just a certain quality to this game's soundtrack that builds really strong memories from hearing them. And so hearing them again, even just a little while down the road, puts you right back in your early hours of play again. As we quell the last of the frenzied noble Pokémon, we wake up one day to see this dreadful energy pouring out of the rift in the sky, which looks absolutely incredible by the way. And the leaders of the village decide that our character must be to blame for this, considering we fell from the sky ourselves. Which, yeah, sure. I've just spent the last couple of weeks risking my life to quell these huge monsters that could have wiped you all out, but of course I must be the one causing this. And so we are exiled from the village, quite literally kicked out and left to die. Luckily we do find refuge through a couple of connections we've made throughout our journey. But yeah, what a crazy twist. There's probably a deeper message here about projecting our fears onto outsiders before taking a minute to look inwards. Take from that what you will. So we're suddenly tasked with proving our innocence by resolving this crisis. And depending on which clan you decide to directly team up with, you'll eventually face off against either Dialga or Palkia, that you'll catch and then use to battle the other, which has taken on a special origin form, which, they're okay. They don't blow me away, but they were cool to see in game for the first time. Once this cinematic showdown is over, the skies return to normal and we've cleared our name in the most dramatic fashion. The credits are rolling, what a great adventure. But it's not over yet. You do not want to shut your console down here, because the post-game features the most impactful event in the entire game. The post-game centers around this guy, Volo. He's a merchant we've seen a fair bit of throughout the game, and someone we viewed as any other casual ally throughout our adventure. But he's been hiding a big secret. Volo is desperate to capture Arceus and use it to destroy and recreate the world to his liking. So much so that he was the one who created the space-time rift in the sky by calling on the powers of the legendary shadow Pokémon Giratina. We now have to defeat him to stop this unhinged scheme of his. This battle is famous because it's very difficult. You have to defeat Volo, then defeat Giratina, and then defeat Giratina again in its origin form, all without ever having a chance to heal your Pokemon. You've got to play this very intelligently. It took me a few attempts the first time around, and even knowing what was coming, it still took me a few attempts on this second playthrough. It's the final battle to end all final battles. But as I said, you don't want to skip out on this, because it truly ties up the narrative of this game. Only after defeating Volo does the world feel fully at peace again. Then the final thing to do is to complete the Pokédex and take on Arceus itself in the most difficult of noble Pokemon battles you'll ever take on. I am not going to complete the Pokédex again anytime soon to grab the game footage, so a couple of screenshots we'll have to do in this video. The story is decent. There's a lot of different themes and metaphors in here. Fear is one I briefly mentioned earlier, us being the outsider and having to earn the trust of a village that is fiercely suspicious of us. Tradition versus progress is a big one, with the Diamond and Pearl clans clashing over their worldviews. Finding a sense of belonging, you really do feel those uncomfortable emotions as a foreign visitor in this land. I never truly felt like I was part of the group in this game. That was a big thing for me. I always felt like the odd one out. That mental strain was never lifted. And it all comes together to give this game a very unique atmosphere and emotional weight. One thing in particular that weighs very heavy on me is the fact that our character never gets to go home. We're trapped in the past forever. That seems like the one glaring loose end to this whole thing. Our character surely has a family and friends and people in their lives who will be wondering where the hell we've disappeared to. I think a nicer ending would have been to have our character have another one of those dreamlike encounters with Arceus, where we're taken back home to our bedroom, but while still possessing the Arceus phone that gives us the ability to hop between there and Hisui. It's a purely semantic thing for the story, but yeah, it could have had us move out of the room we were staying in Jubilife Village, replacing it with our real bedroom that we could access from the Arceus phone at any time. That would have given our character some resolution to their story. I'd be interested to hear what other people think about this, so let me know. Just a little word on the graphical side of things. I think this game looks really beautiful. I think the art style is something you're either really on board with or really not. I understand it both ways. The palettes are muted, and I will submit that when you're in the middle of a big grassy field, it does start to look a bit dull and bland. But go to areas like Cobalt Coastlands and the Alabaster Icelands, and that is where, in my opinion, this game really shines. And the art direction is 100% vindicated, because it looks really, really great. It suits this game's time period and environment specifically. It definitely would not work for every region. Pokémon Legends Arceus was a brave step into new territory for the franchise. It took pretty much every cog within the Pokémon experience and reimagined it. When you do that, you know you're going to get a mixed bag of reactions. But at the same time, we really were entering a point where Pokémon had to do something different. Sword and Shield encompassed the Pokémon formula in the most quintessential Pokémon formula way. The next game had to push some boundaries. And whatever your overall view and opinions are on this game, you've got to give it to Game Freak for having the guts to take a swing. Multiple swings all within one game really, because we know they didn't have to. The Pokémon formula has shown time and time again that it will print money, seemingly forever, as long as there are new Pokémon to catch and new merch to be sold. I like this game for how infinitely playable it is, with all the side quests and adventuring and mass outbreak stuff, etc. But I dislike it for how unreplayable it is. It takes so much time and effort to grind your way to things like completing the Pokédex and 100%ing all the side missions, maxing out your star level, that there is no way you're going to want to do all that again on a new save. I started a new save for this video, but I just did the main story. I didn't do side missions or complete the Pokédex or worry about gathering loads of materials. It's the kind of game you play properly once, and then just sort of continue to exist in. But that's not exactly an uncommon thing these days, so it's not a complaint I'm making here, just an observation. We know now that this game was not a one-off. Legends seems to be becoming a bona fide running series within mainline Pokémon, which is great to hear. There are some amazing opportunities for Legends games out there that almost write themselves. There's so much lore to tap into in the Pokémon world. So yeah, I can't wait to see how that's explored in the future. For now, let me know your thoughts on Pokémon Legends Arceus. I'd be really interested to hear where people sit with this game, especially now we're a few years down the line. And how do you feel about the Legends concept in general? Does it fill you with excitement? Or does the experimental stuff just not appeal to you? Drop them all down in the comments. While you're down there, please do drop a like on the video, it helps a lot. Subscribe for more Pokémon videos. Special thanks to our channel members. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and I will catch you in the next one.